What if one of the most overlooked coins in American change has been sitting unnoticed in a drawer for years? A Kennedy half-dollar may look like nothing more than 50 cents, but the right date, mint mark, or unusual detail can make collectors stop and take a second look. Welcome back to Change Your Life. Today's countdown features 3 Kennedy half-dollars. 1992 D Kennedy half-dollar. 1971 D Kennedy half-dollar. 1993 D Kennedy half-dollar. These copper-nickel clad coins carry the historic presidential seal reverse design, and many have survived in dirty, worn, and heavily circulated condition. While most are ordinary, collectors know that minting errors, die varieties, unusual strikes, and overlooked characteristics can make certain examples far more interesting. The question is, could one of these be hiding something you haven't noticed yet? Before you spend an old Kennedy half-dollar, check it carefully and stay with us until the end. The final coin could have the most surprising detail in today's countdown. Now, let's uncover coin number 1. Some coins are valuable because they are ancient. Others become interesting because of the story surrounding them. And then there are coins that look completely ordinary. Until someone takes a closer look. The 1992 D Kennedy half-dollar is one of those coins. At first glance, it appears to be nothing more than an old 50-cent piece. The kind of coin that could sit unnoticed inside a drawer for years. But for collectors, the details matter. The date. The mint mark. The condition. And most importantly, whether the coin contains something unusual that happened during the minting process. The 1992 D Kennedy half-dollar was produced at the Denver Mint, identified by the small d mint mark. That tiny letter is one of the first things collectors check. Because 2 Kennedy half-dollars can look almost identical while coming from completely different production runs. On the front of the coin is the famous portrait of President John F. Kennedy. The design was created shortly after Kennedy's assassination and became one of the most recognizable portraits in modern American coinage. Turn the coin over. And the reverse reveals the presidential seal design. The heraldic eagle holds a ribbon in its beak while arrows and an olive branch represent different aspects of national symbolism. Around the design are stars and inscriptions that give the reverse its distinctive appearance. The coin itself is made from copper-nickel clad composition, with an outer layer of copper-nickel bonded to a copper core. That construction helped make the Kennedy half-dollar durable enough for decades of circulation. But circulation leaves evidence. And a heavily circulated 1992 D Kennedy half-dollar can look dramatically different from one that spent most of its life protected inside a collection. The brilliant original surface may be gone. The fields can be covered with small scratches. The highest points of Kennedy's portrait may show noticeable wear. The reverse can contain contact marks from years of being handled alongside other coins. To someone unfamiliar with collecting, it may look almost worthless. A collector doesn't stop there. They bring the coin beneath strong light. They examine the date. The D mint mark. Kennedy's hair. The lettering. The rim. Then they flip the coin over. The eagle. The shield. The stars. The olive branch. The arrows. Every detail gets another inspection. Collectors particularly watch for genuine mint-made errors and recognized varieties, such as double dies, die cracks, die chips, struck-through errors, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, and other abnormalities that can be authenticated as products of the minting process. And this distinction is extremely important. A damaged coin is not automatically an error coin. A scratch created after the coin left the mint doesn't suddenly make it rare. A genuine mint-made characteristic is a completely different story. That is why professional authentication can matter when a potentially unusual Kennedy half-dollar is discovered. Most circulated 1992 D Kennedy half-dollars are ordinary collectible coins and do not represent a fortune simply because of their date. But exceptional condition, recognized varieties, And authenticated mint errors can create substantially more collector interest. And that's where the real mystery begins. Because the next Kennedy half-dollar on our list comes from a completely different era. A time when America's coinage was going through a major transformation. And surprisingly, the 1971 D. Kennedy half-dollar carries a connection to one of the biggest changes ever made to the composition of America's circulating half-dollars. The story of a Kennedy half-dollar doesn't end when it leaves the mint. That's when its real journey begins. The 1992 D. Kennedy half-dollar entered a world where half-dollars were already becoming less common in everyday transactions. Unlike quarters and dimes, Kennedy half-dollars were often saved rather than spent. Some went into bank rolls. Others disappeared into drawers, jars, collections, and forgotten boxes. And decades later, those forgotten coins can become interesting to collectors. The Denver Mint produced the 1992 D issue, and a small D mint mark remains one of the easiest ways to identify its origin. But the mint mark is only the beginning. Experienced collectors know that the same date and mint mark can appear on coins with dramatically different levels of preservation. One 1992 D. Kennedy half-dollar may have spent 30 years loose in circulation. Another may have been placed into a protective holder shortly after it was produced. They are technically the same issue, but they can tell very different stories. A heavily circulated example may show scratches across Kennedy's portrait. The hair can appear softer. The cheek and jawline can show contact marks. The fields may contain countless tiny abrasions. Flip it over, and the presidential seal can reveal even more evidence of its journey. The eagle's feathers, the shield, the stars, the olive branch, the arrows. All of these areas can collect marks as the coin moves through circulation. For collectors, however, where isn't the only thing worth studying. They also look for unusual characteristics that may have originated during production. A genuine double die. A die crack. A die chip. A struck-through error. An off-center strike. A clipped planchet. Or another recognized mint-made variety. These possibilities are what make careful inspection worthwhile. But there is an important difference between an actual mint error and damage caused after the coin entered circulation. A deep scratch isn't automatically a mint error. A dent isn't automatically a variety. Discoloration doesn't automatically make a coin rare. And a worn coin isn't automatically valuable. Serious collectors look for evidence. That's why authentication and professional grading can become important when a coin appears genuinely unusual. Condition matters too. A heavily circulated 1992 D. Kennedy half-dollar generally won't command the same collector interest as an exceptional example with strong original surfaces. The coin's appearance, its preservation, its variety status, and its authentication all contribute to the overall picture. So if you discover a 1992 D. Kennedy half-dollar in an old collection, don't immediately assume you found a fortune. Instead, look carefully. Check the date. Confirm the D mint mark. Study the surfaces. Examine the portrait. Then inspect the presidential seal under good lighting. By 1971, the Kennedy half-dollar had entered a completely different chapter of its history. The coin still carried the same familiar portrait of President John F. Kennedy. But the metal beneath that design had changed. The United States Mint had already moved away from the original 90% silver composition used for early Kennedy half-dollars. The 1971 D. Kennedy half-dollar belongs to the copper-nickel clad era, with a copper core surrounded by layers of copper-nickel alloy. For collectors, that makes 1971 an especially interesting point in the Kennedy half-dollar timeline. The coin was produced at the Denver Mint, identified by the small D mint mark. Look closely beneath the date. There it is. A tiny letter that tells us where this particular half-dollar began its journey. But the real story isn't just about the mint mark. It's about what happened to these coins afterward. Some were spent. Some were saved. Some disappeared into drawers. And others were tossed into old jars where they remained untouched for decades. Imagine finding one today. The coin may be dirty, worn, heavily circulated. Its once brilliant surfaces may have disappeared beneath years of scratches and contact marks. Kennedy's hair may look noticeably softer. The cheek and jawline can show signs of repeated handling. The fields may be covered with tiny abrasions. Turn it over. And the presidential seal tells another part of the story. The eagle. The shield. The stars. The arrows. The olive branch. Every element can reveal how much the coin has experienced. But collectors don't only examine the obvious. They search for the unexpected. Under magnification and strong lighting, they carefully inspect the date, lettering, rims, portrait details, and reverse design for genuine mint-made errors or recognized varieties. That can include double dies, die cracks, die chips, struck-through errors, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, and other abnormalities that can be authenticated as originating during production. And this is where patience becomes important. A coin doesn't become rare simply because it is old. A damaged surface doesn't automatically indicate a mint error. And a dark or dirty Kennedy $50 isn't automatically valuable. Serious collectors separate normal circulation damage from characteristics that actually occurred at the mint. That distinction can completely change the way a coin is evaluated. For most circulated 1971 D Kennedy $50, the coin remains a normal collectible issue rather than a fortune. But an authenticated mint error, recognized variety, or exceptional high-grade example can attract considerably more attention. And that's what makes this coin worth investigating. Not because every 1971 D $50 is secretly worth thousands. But because the right coin can tell a very different story. A coin produced during a major transition in American coinage. A coin that survived decades of circulation. And a coin that may still contain tiny clues from the day it was struck. But there's another twist. The next Kennedy $50 takes us into the early 1990s again. And this time, the D mint mark isn't the only detail collectors need to watch. The 1971 D Kennedy $50 is interesting for another reason that collectors often appreciate. It sits right at the beginning of a major new era for the Kennedy $50. The silver era had ended for regular Kennedy $50, and the familiar copper-nickel clad composition had become the standard. That means when you hold a circulated 1971 D in your hand, you're holding a small piece of the transition in American coinage. And that transition is visible in the coin itself. The outer surface has the familiar silvery appearance of copper-nickel clad coinage. But the edge can reveal the copper core. On a worn example, years of handling can make the surfaces look dramatically different from the original coin. Some pieces become dull gray. Others develop darker tones. Scratches accumulate across the fields. And heavily circulated examples may have noticeably softened details. But collectors know that appearance alone doesn't determine rarity. A dirty coin isn't automatically rare. A scratched coin isn't automatically an error. And an old coin isn't automatically worth a fortune. The real investigation begins when something appears inconsistent with normal circulation wear. That's when collectors reach for magnification. They examine Kennedy's portrait. The lettering. The date. The D mint mark. The rims. Then they turn to the reverse and inspect the presidential seal. The eagle's feathers. The shield. The stars. The arrows. The olive branch. They are looking for evidence of something that happened before the coin ever reached the public. A genuine double die. A die crack. A die chip. A struck-through error. An off-center strike. a clipped planchet, or another recognized mint-made variety. When a potentially valuable characteristic is discovered, professional authentication can be extremely important. Why? Because post-mint damage can sometimes look surprisingly dramatic. A coin can be scratched, flattened, chemically altered, or damaged by machines long after leaving the mint. Those marks may look unusual. But unusual does not automatically mean valuable. Collectors therefore ask a much more important question. Did this happen at the mint? That question separates a genuine mint error from ordinary damage. For the average circulated 1971 D. Kennedy $50, the answer usually leads back to a normal collectible coin. But exceptional condition or a properly authenticated mint-made variety can create much greater collector interest. And there's another detail worth remembering. Because Kennedy $50 were not commonly used in everyday transactions compared with smaller denominations, many surviving pieces were saved rather than heavily circulated. That means condition can vary dramatically from one example to another. One may look like it has spent decades inside a cash register. Another may still preserve surprisingly sharp details. And that difference can matter enormously to collectors. So if you find a 1971 D. Kennedy $50, don't judge it by its dirt or age alone. Check the date. Confirm the D mint mark. Study the surfaces. Look at the edge. Inspect the portrait. Then examine the presidential seal carefully. Because sometimes the most interesting clue isn't something you can see from across the room. It's something you discover only after turning the coin beneath a bright light. Some Kennedy $50 are remembered because of their age. Others because of their silver content. But some become interesting simply because collectors know that the smallest details can tell a much bigger story. The 1993 D. Kennedy $50 is one of those coins. At first glance, it looks like an ordinary American 50-cent piece. A little worn. A little dirty. Perhaps covered with the scratches and contact marks that come from years of circulation. But turn it beneath a bright light. And the investigation begins. The 1993 D. Kennedy $50 was struck at the Denver Mint, identified by the small D mint mark beneath the date. That tiny letter gives the coin its first important clue. The obverse carries the famous portrait of President John F. Kennedy, a design that had already become one of the most recognizable images in American coinage. His portrait captures a moment in American history that continues to give the Kennedy $50 a unique identity among U.S. coins. Turn the coin over. And the presidential seal dominates the reverse. The eagle stands at the center. The shield covers its chest. Arrows extend from one side. An olive branch extends from the other. Stars surround the design. Every element carries a piece of American symbolism. The 1993 D issue belongs to the copper-nickel clad era, using a copper core surrounded by outer layers of copper-nickel alloy. That composition was designed for durability. And durability mattered. Because many of these coins spent years moving through everyday commerce. A circulated example can look completely different from the coin that originally left the Denver Mint. The surfaces may be dull. Kennedy's hair can show noticeable wear. The fields may contain countless tiny scratches. The rims can show contact marks. The reverse may have softened details around the eagle and shield. But experienced collectors don't stop at appearance. They inspect. They compare. They look for something that doesn't belong. Under magnification, they examine the 1993 date. The D mint mark. Kennedy's portrait. The lettering. The rim. And then the presidential seal. The eagle's feathers. The shield. The stars. The arrows. The olive branch. Collectors may search for genuine mint-made errors and recognized varieties, including double dies, die cracks, die chips, struck-through errors, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, and other abnormalities that can be professionally authenticated. But there is an important rule every collector should remember. Not every unusual-looking coin is an error. A scratch caused by circulation is not automatically a mint error. A dent isn't automatically a variety. A dark surface isn't proof of rarity. And a worn Kennedy half-dollar isn't automatically valuable. The strongest discoveries are based on evidence. That's why professional authentication can make such a difference when a coin appears genuinely unusual. For most circulated 1993 D Kennedy half-dollars, the coin remains a normal collectible issue rather than a guaranteed fortune. But an authenticated mint-made error, recognized variety, or exceptional high-grade example can attract significantly more collector interest. And this is where the story becomes especially interesting. Because after examining 3 different Kennedy half-dollars, we've seen 3 different moments in the history of American coinage. The 1992 D represents the modern clad era. The 1971 D takes us back to the beginning of that major composition transition. And the 1993 D shows how the Kennedy half-dollar continued carrying its historic design into the 1990s. But we're not finished yet. Because the final part is where we put all 3 coins side by side, and reveal exactly what a collector should check before deciding whether one belongs in a collection or simply goes back into circulation. The final step in examining a 1993 D Kennedy half-dollar is learning how to separate an ordinary coin from one that genuinely deserves more attention. Start with the basics. Confirm the date. 1993. Then look beneath it. D. That tells you the coin was produced at the Denver Mint. Next, examine the overall surface. A heavily circulated example may show scratches, dull areas, contact marks, and softened details. None of those characteristics automatically make the coin rare. Instead, collectors look for evidence of something unusual that happened during the minting process. Under magnification, inspect Kennedy's portrait carefully. Look around the lettering. Study the date. Examine the rim. Then turn the coin over and inspect the presidential seal. Look closely at the eagle's feathers, shield, stars, arrows, and olive branch. A genuine mint-made variety may reveal itself through a characteristic that doesn't look like normal circulation damage. Collectors can encounter double dies, die cracks, die chips, struck-through errors, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, and other authenticated mint-made varieties. But the key word is authenticated. A coin that looks strange isn't automatically rare. Sometimes damage happens after the coin leaves the mint. Coins can be scratched by other coins, bent by machines, chemically altered, dropped, scraped, or exposed to harsh environments. Those conditions can create dramatic appearances without creating significant numismatic value. That's why serious collectors don't simply ask, "Does this coin look unusual?" They ask, "Can I prove why it looks unusual?" That is a much more important question. Condition also plays a major role. A dirty, heavily circulated 1993 D Kennedy half-dollar will normally have much less collector appeal than a sharply preserved example with strong original surfaces. And even among circulated coins, differences in wear can be significant. One coin may have nearly smooth details. Another may still show surprisingly strong definition. Professional grading provides a standardized way to evaluate that preservation. For ordinary circulated examples, however, the most important thing to understand is simple. A 1993 D Kennedy half-dollar is not automatically a fortune simply because it is old or carries a D mint mark. Most examples remain normal collectible coins. Greater interest can come from recognized varieties, professionally authenticated mint errors, or exceptional high-grade examples. And that brings us back to the 3 coins featured in today's search. The 1992 D, the 1971 D, and the 1993 D. 3 dates. 3 pieces of American coin history. All carrying the unmistakable Kennedy portrait.